All right, so let's talk some Loki. Got 2 episodes out so far. I literally just watched the 2 episodes right before we went on air. And yeah, we're going to discuss. We got our man Suge Knight 323 in the house. He's here to help us break down these first 2 episodes. So we can start with you, Suge. Like, what is your opinion? What's your initial opinion of the episodes?
Well, I mean, first off, thank you for having me on. Appreciate you both, man. Been big fans of you guys since I found your podcast.
Appreciate it.
And
man.
I know this is on your old man gaming one, which is more awesome because I love gaming too, and I love talking comic book stuff. So I'm excited for this. Look, I was off camera. We were talking about it. I am a big comic book fan. Collected comics as a kid. I've always been into Marvel and DC and those comic books. But my main love was always been multiverse, Secret Wars, things like that. What it had to do with Spider-Man, X-Men, Marvel. So this is right up my alley, and I love it. And this is what I enjoy. And so these first couple episodes have been great. I'm excited. I've been theorizing a lot, and it's super cool to see what they're going to do and how much this is going to open the MCU. So I'm super excited about it.
So B, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the first couple of episodes. Loki was not a character that I was really into just from the movies, and I'm not a comic book reader. I didn't read them growing up. I always wanted to get into them, but it's too crazy. Like there's too many different arcs, and also they cost too much money for each issue, so I never really got into it. So I've really been enjoying the MCU, and particularly with Loki because I just like how he's super condescending, right? And he started off as one of the main villains in the early movies, and they're progressively like enlarging the scale, making the scale bigger, right?
Yeah.
And so you see Loki here, and he's like I said, he's super condescending, but he shows up, and everybody's basically just laughing at him for the entire first episode.
Yeah,
because you're nobody to us. Like you're not even a dangerous variant, as they call them.
Right.
So I kind of enjoy seeing the characters in other circumstances that you're not used to seeing them in. Yeah. So I've enjoyed it a lot so far.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Suge. I grew up collecting comic books, and no, I wasn't a big Loki fan either. I collected some Thor comic books, but yeah, X-Men, Spider-Man, those were my main ones. I didn't really get into Avengers that much either, but obviously with this MCU, we're all huge Avengers fans now. But yeah, I love how Marvel, Disney just has done a good job just building this world and taking their time building characters and reintroducing characters. Because I told B, like, essentially what we're seeing right now is you have characters that were killed off, and then now they want to bring some of them back. And you see this all the time in any genre of movies or, just shows or whatever, but it's not easily explained because you only have so much time to explain how so-and-so came back. But the way they're doing it now is it's natural, right? So when you see Loki appear in movies, you're not going to wonder, well, I thought he was dead. How did he come back? You know exactly how he came back. It's being chronicled on the show. So, and like everything's explained. They're explaining how they're doing the multiverse more and more. I like how it's going so far. And honestly, all the shows that they're showing on Disney Plus, like B said, I've been impressed because I wasn't interested in any of them. I wasn't interested in Scarlet Witch or Vision. Wasn't interested in Falcon and Winter Soldier. Wasn't interested in Loki. None of them, but they've all been pretty good so far. So
yeah, right. For sure. If you look back, going back, like you said, when we were growing up, the movies we got from Marvel, Blade, the original Fantastic Four, like you look back, those are not the greatest movies. I mean, they're nostalgic and you like them. Like I would still love Blade.
Blade still holds up, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and now they're going to make a new one, but look at where we came from to now and how the story building is built. And now they're adding those characters. We're going to be getting Fantastic Four in a couple of years. We're going to be getting Blade into this MCU. And so I agree with you, Jose, that they've learned to build the story, build the characters and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about it. And I wasn't interested in some of these shows, but I was interested in Loki when I heard about it, but I was waiting to see what was going to happen with it.
Yeah.
Just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying. I love I don't know if it's been confirmed. I mean, I think they kind of have, but I love that they're reaching back and bringing the Spider-Man actors into the MCU now when they're going to be doing the multiverse. Like, you know, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, you know, bringing I believe what's his name, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. So I love that they're even going back to those movies and trying to bring it forward, you know, into the MCU.
I mean, they're claiming they're not in the movie, but Marvel, you know, and they may not be. They may just be bringing back the villains for that. But what's crazy, if you look at Loki, is it's going to tie into all this. It's going to tie into Doctor Strange. It's going to tie into Spider-Man, and it's going to tie into the next big bad, which we think is Kane
the Conqueror.
Yeah. So it's very interesting how they're using the show as a springboard for the new Phase 4. That's here. Phase 4. That's what I was thinking. Phase 4, because they're going to use that to springboard for the next couple of movies, which is kind of dope because it's a TV show, but you're using it to further the storyline of the movies. So it's kind of dope, and so like I said, I'm super excited about it.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into episode 1. It starts off during the scene in Endgame where the Avengers are trying to retrieve the Tesseract, and they have Loki in custody. Hulk is kind of angry. They made him take the stairs. Hulk smash. Tesseract goes sliding out around the floor. Loki picks it up and disappears. Right. And from that point, he gets picked up by the TVA, which is the Time Variance Authority. Yeah. And from that point on, he is just in bureaucratic hell, basically. They're kind of processing him through, they're making him take numbers, walk through these lines, go to all these different desks, talk to all these people. And, you know, the end point is he's going on trial for, I forget exactly how they worded it, but basically just messing with the timeline. Right.
Yeah. The sacred timeline. That's the key thing, the sacred timeline. Because I think a lot of people are confusing, which is why I've given this Loki and this Loki show the name TV Loki, because when they take him out of the desert, they delete that branch of time. So he never gets the Tesseract and he never leaves. So people were assuming, oh, this Loki maybe lives this and then goes back. That's why at the end of this episode, we'll get into it, he makes the comment of I can go back.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So it's deleted. So now he's no longer in time. He's no longer part of time anymore. So he is just simply he exists out of time, basically. So that's why I give him the nickname TV Loki.
That is, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that kind of confused me. Like I said, I never read the comics or anything, and so when they set off those reset charges, which you're referring to, and he was in the desert, they went and picked him up. They have a reset. I think they called it a charge, and it has like it's not a bomb, but it has this energy that kind of emanates out from it, and it gives you the impression that it's deleting everything, but they don't really explicitly say that. I mean, you see the scenery kind of disappearing, but they don't say what happens to all the people in that time explicitly, right?
Right.
And so from that point on, I'm like, are they going to kill Loki? Like, where can Loki go at this point? Because that's kind of the impression that he's getting as he's moving through the TVA. He's kind of starting to understand. He's like, I don't have a place anymore. You know?
See, well, and this is just a theory. I think all those like time variants, right? When they have to go to trial, it's really just to see, like, because all of them are out of place, right? They all get snatched up, and the timeline's been reset, and they none of them can go back. I think it's just a matter of who can be converted to like agents, right? Like I think Owen Wilson might be a variant himself, you know. That was converted to an agent.
Actually doing another show, someone actually said that they think that Mobius is actually another Loki variant.
Oh,
because there's a lot of what I love about the show is the throwaway lines. There's a bunch of throwaway lines, and we'll get into episode 2. But it
would make sense. It would make sense. Yeah,
but there's a throwaway line when he first getting processed, and it goes through the metal detector. And the guy's telling them, oh, we're seeing about if you have a soul, or what some cultures call a soul. That's a throwaway line. And then when you go to episode 2, what we'll talk about is what happens at the end. There's something interesting about that line. And then when you see who's at the end of episode 2, it gets very interesting, because in the comic books, there's something that has to do with Loki's soul,
Mm-hmm.
and Marvel likes to take bits and parts of comic books and
Yeah.
implement them. So that might be part of what's going on, because it's weird how they placed it. They're like, why would you bring that up? And then all of a sudden in episode 2, something comes up and you're like, oh, that kind of makes sense now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of throwaway lines. There's a throwaway line where Mobius talks to Loki, and he says, when he brings up the Nightmare division, he's like, "Oh, that's another division. I'll help you burn that one down."
Yeah.
That pertains. A lot of people think of the villain that they thought was in WandaVision. I can't even think right now. Mephisto. They thought
Mephisto.
You're like,
Mephisto.
oh, and that because Mephisto is the ruler of the Nightmare realm.
Yeah.
You know, there's the gum. I said there's something about that gum that's important. In episode 2, it ends up being something important. So there's a lot of throwaway lines. You got to really pay attention to this stuff, which I love. And that's what I like about the show more than anything, because you got to pay attention while you're watching. You got to go, oh, that might be a reference to something.
And Owen Wilson also made reference, right, when they're trying to figure out where the next Loki is. He made a comment like, "Hey, you keep doing this, you might take my job," right? Like that's what made me think. Like, I think this is just what happens. Like they kind of test out these variants to see who they can keep and who they have to delete, basically. Who
they can reform.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. You want to break down this episode a little bit more, B?
Yeah, and I do want to point out also, Owen Wilson is playing Mobius, and I think that he's doing a great job so far, and I think he was a great pick to play off of Hiddleston as Loki, because he's real condescending. He's always talking down to people. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and Owen Wilson just has that real laid back kind of way of talking, and it just works really well. He takes everything that Loki says and just kind of throws it right back at him real quick, and not in an antagonistic way, but it's just real entertaining watching them go back and forth. As far as him being a variant, or him maybe being Loki, another variant of Loki, I'm not sure. He really, to me, it's just playing as he's supposed to be like that detective who just plays outside the rules, and right. Not that he's because if he's a Loki variant, I assume he would be kind of in hiding almost, but I just, that's not the way it's playing to me. Obviously it could be, like I said, I don't know the history of all these characters, but he plays to me like that kind of a typical detective character who is he's the hot shot, and he gets to play outside the rules because he always gets the job done. He just doesn't do it conventionally, Right.
Now, I don't know if he's an actual like Marvel character. Like, I haven't kept up with comic books in a while. So, I mean, somebody watching this might correct us and say, "Oh, you guys know who Mobius is?" Okay.
No, he is a Marvel character, but it's a more of a lesser role. Gotcha. Not as it's not a lesser role, but he's not a big character.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about him being possibly a variant and anything. I don't want to skip ahead to episode 2, but there's a conversation between him and Loki where he talks about a certain magazine that he has, and he's like, I just do this because I was created to do this. Mm-hmm. But if you notice, he kind of is like, you can see the wheels turning because he's talking about the magazine. He's talking about how at the end, after everything's done, we're just there, like we're done with everything. And so I understand where B's coming from, but I think there's a little bit more to him, some kind of backstory, which I maybe, like Jose said, these are variants that they caught, and then they just make them into agents, instead of deleting them, because they can help, because they might be obviously powerful. They're powerful enough to break time, so they can help. So. I like I said, I think there's a little bit more with Mobius, but we'll see what happens, because you just get more of a character development of this first round, especially because you gotta remember the Loki, when he leaves with the Tesseract, he doesn't go through until Infinity War, so he doesn't have that growth where you saw in Thor: the Dark World, where you see he finds out his mother dies, then you see him Thor Ragnarok and all this stuff. So what I loved about this episode is that they got him there in under 30 minutes. So that's what this episode is.
Yeah.
You felt for that other Loki. Now this is the same Loki we hated in Avengers, but now by the end of this episode, he's the Loki that we care for. We're like, oh yeah, I care about this guy because he's been through some stuff. and you saw he saw his own mortality. He saw his mother died. He saw
You
him
see him
die.
go through that emotional roller coaster because like he's showing
Exactly.
like they're showing flashes of when his mother died. He's showing when him and Thor kind of reconcile and they're fighting together. And he's smiling about that because he loves his brother. So when his father died and when he eventually died, and it's like just like to see him react to everything, like it's just like you can see like everything like just like literally his whole life flashing before his eyes and just how he just has to soak all that in. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. It was dope.
Yeah, so do you guys think? We're talking about there's a scene where Mobius basically just plays all these memories for him, and obviously this Loki, like you said, doesn't he didn't live this stuff, so he doesn't know it. So he's watching it, he's going through it. Do you guys think that they're possibly setting up to have him turn not hero, but hero-ish for the next phase?
Well, personally, what I think is going to happen is this Loki's going to be Tom Hiddleston is done after this. He's not playing Loki anymore. So what I love what he's doing is he's putting so much into this. These 2 episodes, he's acting great.
Mm-hmm.
The character's great. So I think he's putting all into it. Being an actor. I think this version of Loki is going to die. Is going to set off the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get a new version of Loki in Thor Love and Thunder. Possibly Lady Loki, possibly at the end of episode 2 when you see if you watch the credits, you'll see the character we'll talk about in episode 2. But I think this version of Loki is gonna try. He's still who he is, a mischief, conniving guy, God. But by the end of this series, he's gonna do something for good. But I don't think it's gonna work out the way he thinks it does, and it's gonna cause a chain reaction.
Yeah. Like Loki says something. I think we're jumping ahead to episode 2, but he mentions that nobody is truly good, nobody's truly bad, right? Truly evil. And I think that's his motivation for everything, right? Like in his own mind, like that's him bringing balance. Where look, things are going too good. There's got to be some chaos. Oh, there's too much chaos. We got to bring it down a little bit. Like he I think in his weird way, like he brings balance in that way. You know what I mean? So if things are too chaotic, by the end, he'll find a way to balance it out. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we all love about the MCU. Nobody is black or white.
Yes.
You see a little bit of every part of them. You going over the I guess is what 22 movies now with Black Widow coming out. Like you see all these different sides of the characters, and that's why with these shows, with WandaVision, with the Adventures of Bucky and Sam, because they were not in the suits very long in that series.
Yeah.
And now with Loki, you can see that these shows can really hit the ground running. And like you said, Suge, they got him through all of that stuff in half an hour in that first episode because they don't have to introduce you to this character. You've been watching Loki, you've been watching, the events in the MCU, you saw Ragnarok, you saw Endgame, Infinity War and all that. So they're able to just really jump in immediately and get, exactly what they need out of every scene. Whereas most shows kind of take a few episodes or in some cases even maybe over a season to really find their footing. So yeah, they're on a roll with Disney. Like they're just pumping it out and it's great to see. So, in episode 1, it's really all in the TVA and the Time Variance Authority, and it's all or mostly Mobius and Loki one-on-one.
Yeah.
And just kind of bringing them up to speed on what's going on. And they're, kind of sparring back and forth psychologically, right?
Yeah.
At the end of that episode, Owen Wilson or Mobius kind of drops the bomb on him that the variant that they're looking for, that they want Loki's help in finding, is him.
Yes.
And that's when you get into episode 2.
Yeah. I thought they did a pretty good job for one episode, really breaking down Loki's psyche a little bit. You know what I mean? Like the two of them going back and forth with each other, him getting to see his future and him reacting to it, and just the questions that Mobius asked him, right? And that's where it gets a little testy, because he's just like, okay, like if I let you go right now, what are you gonna do? He's like, well, I want to take over Midgar. He's like, okay, you want to take over Earth, then what? And kind of just letting him play out in his mind, like if you get what you want, like what do you get out of that? Like what's your motivation for doing that? And it makes him have to. You could tell, like, he has a question, like, what is my motivation? Like, why do I want that? So I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought, you see from the first episode how this Loki is going to start to change, because nobody broke it down to him that way, right? Like everybody's just trying to stop him from doing it, and he's rebellious by nature. And it just took one person to say, well, why do you want to do it? What do you get out of that? I think that started to set the motions for a different type of Loki that we're going to see.
Yeah, well, I think it serves as a double purpose, because if you look at it now, knowing what we know, what happens at the episode 1, Mobius is trying to figure out what this other variant of Loki's doing, his motivation. That's why he's asking him these questions. Well, what if you do? If I let you go, what are you going to do? Da, 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 da. And he's asking these questions because he's trying to figure out what this other Loki's going to do. We don't know that yet until the end. He goes, "Oh, well, I'm just letting you know the variant we're trying to find is you. It's another version of you."
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at that, I agree, Jose. You're thinking, okay, that's hitting Loki hard. That's like a what is it? Remember that show where if you were a drug addict, they get all your people and they make you read the letters.
Intervention.
Intervention. Yeah, it was an intervention for Loki.
Yeah.
But then you realize that Mobius is actually trying to find out information in order to catch this other Loki.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. So it serves a dual purpose where it sets up Loki, but it also prepares you as a person watching the show. Oh, he's trying to find his other Loki and find out why this other Loki is doing all these things, killing all these other people. And then when it goes into episode 2, it's kind of funny, Jose, because you said it almost like they turn him into an agent. Like he's sitting there, he has to watch videos. He's got to learn,
take the tutorials and everything. Yeah,
the TVA book, playbook, or rule book, and everything like that. And you're like, well, why would they do that? And then they're like, we need him. We need to try to find this other Loki. Yeah. And so it's kind of dope. What I loved about the episode 2 when we started to look at it is where they're sitting in the library or where he's sitting, and he has to look at Thor, what happens in Ragnarok. Like, remember, he didn't live through that.
When he was reading the files.
When he's reading the files, and he's like, oh crap, like, all right, well, Ragnarok happened. And then he's looking through these files and everything like that. And like I said, there's a couple throwaway lines in there when they're gonna and I keep jumping ahead.
It's fine. Yeah.
But there's like then you see like Owen Wilson talking to the judge, who the cat character, if you look it up, that character is actually a love interest of King the Conqueror. So that's where King, which is, and people are saying in episode 1 and 2, when you look at the statues, the middle one looks like King. So
I was going to get to that next. Like, again, I don't know if the timekeepers are explained in comic books, but I told B just based off of okay.
But so there's different versions. There's the timekeepers, and there's also the councils of the councils of Kings, which are Kanes from different timelines who they don't really I think they intervene or they don't intervene in timeline stuff. But Kane is one that like veers off of that and is like, no, I'm gonna try to take over the world.
That makes more sense then, because I was going with when I saw the 3 guys, I thought that could be the Living Tribunal, because he, the 3 faces of the Living Tribunal, because they actually mentioned him in Doctor Strange briefly, and I thought, well, the one person that can render the Infinity Gauntlet useless is the Living Tribunal, right? So when they showed that the stones didn't work, and everybody's just using them as paperweights, I was like, well, that could just be, the Living Tribunal just saying, hey, like when you come here, like these don't work, like you're
I think it's a deeper meaning than that. I think it's the end of the Infinity Saga, because we no longer care about those anymore. We've moved on now. Like those are not important to us anymore. But also shows how powerful the TVA is, because those things are rendered useless. But it also talks about how the stones, if they're not in their natural timeline, they don't work.
They don't work. Yeah.
And so it shows that wherever the TVA is, which if you've looked online or if you've seen episodes, there's theories. There's an actual clear picture in Ant-Man and the Wasp where when Janet and Pym leave the quantum realm, there's an actual city sitting there. A lot of people believe that's the TVA.
Oh,
But
okay.
in the comic books, Kane the Conqueror lived in a tiny bubbled city in the wherever the TVA is. Yeah, the quantum realm, but like where like between time, he actually was the king or whatever you want to call it of this bubble city or whatever. And so that's why a lot of people are like, okay, that's why Kane's going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum. I don't know. It's Quantum something. Quantumania.
Yeah.
It's called Quantumania. And there's reference to that because there's a reference when Mobius is talking to Loki and he says time works differently here. That's a straight line from Ant-Man and the Wasp where they ask him time works differently here. So that's why a lot of people are assuming that they're in the quantum realm. Where they're at. So it's like I said, Marvel's picks and chooses from comic books and they mix it. So it's not going to just be one straight storyline like the comic books. It's going to be different, which I like because it's a new story. It's similar to this. Like the Infinity Gauntlet saga was different in the comic books than it is in the MCU. The Civil War was different, things like that, and I like that. So, but you could take pieces and kind of figure things out with this, which I enjoy.
Yeah. Okay.
And like you said, they everything they put in there has multiple meanings. And for me, like I said, as somebody who didn't read comics, just seeing that scene, I mean, I enjoyed the scene just for the comedy of it when he's looking at the Infinity Stones in the dude's drawer. I'm like, oh yeah, some of us use those for paperweights. And for the way that hit me was just, man, this is something that we spent the past 20 plus movies obsessing about, and this is the biggest thing in the world, in the universe, right? Like this, you had everybody coming together to fight this one dude because he found these stones and was going to destroy half of all life. And now you show up at the TVA and it's like, oh yeah, they're party favors.
Yeah,
it's no big deal.
Like Suge said, it's a way of saying we're done with this story. We're moving on to something else.
And also showing that what you're dealing with in the coming phase is so much more powerful than what you've been seeing up to this point.
Yeah. Man, Marvel has done an excellent job. I mean, so we'll be talking about this on our channel a lot because we talk about it offline all the time, like the differences between MCU and the DCEU and all the things that DC and Warner Brothers are just doing wrong, and how it really just comes down to they lack the patience, right, to really build their world out, build these characters to make you care about them, right? They want everything right now, and it just doesn't work. Whereas Marvel, they'll spend literally a decade building everything up to get to a final point, and it works. And they're doing the same thing now, and it's interesting to see them do it kind of opposite way. Like when they first started, you had your main movies, you have Avengers, and then everything's kind of branching out from there. But now they're using their TV shows to start to build this second arc, this second story arc. I
mean, if you think about it, go back to the first Avengers in that first phase. We love it, but it wasn't the greatest storyline, but it springboard into more things. But you had to start at a starting point somewhere. So like we look at those movies and they're great, but if you look at them storyline-wise, it was really basic. It was nothing crazy. It wasn't like, oh my God, it was basic for each character. And
what made it work is they made everything relate. They made everything relate. So like that big fight in the city, they always referenced it, as the event or the incident. Like they tied everything together. That's what made it work. Yeah, basic story, like basic story.
Well, do you remember the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk? At the end of that, Tony Stark walks into a bar to talk to the general who's later in Civil War and everything. People lost their minds. They're like, what is he doing at the end of Incredible Hulk? At the end of Captain America, or even in Captain America, you see Tony's dad. You're like, what? Wait, what? Yeah, that's Tony Stark's dad. He's in a different movie. Why is he? Oh my God! Like, and you started. they slowly pieced it together, and now they can just take any story they want and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to implement it. And you get great characters. You got Black Panther. I never thought in my lifetime I'd see Black Panther.
Me neither.
Never thought I was going to see. Remember, if you remember, nobody ever thought we were going to get Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And when that happened, people lost their mind. Now X-Men are on their way. Fantastic Four on their way. There might be a time where we see, Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four all standing next to each other.
Yes, right. I think that's going to come.
I never thought I would see that. I only saw that in comic books or in the cartoons. To see that now, dude, it's so exciting. And they're using, and like you said, Jose, they're using all this to springboard into those stories, and which is the smart way to do it, and the right way to do it.
Yeah,
because now they don't have to. At the beginning, you had multiple movies. You had the origin story for all these characters: Iron Man 1, Captain America 1. The first Thor movie, and you're kind of setting up who these characters are in our universe, in our MCU. And now, after that whole arc, the whole Infinity War arc, you're using these shows to show people what the state of the world is after all of that. Right,
yeah.
You have
that's what I loved about Falcon and Winter Soldier is you kind of see the aftermath of everything.
Right, so in Falcon and Winter Soldier, you see what happened to the world when everybody just suddenly came back.
Yeah,
right. In WandaVision, you see her, really just working through her grief.
Yeah,
through that whole series, and then becoming Scarlet Witch. They have the introduction of Agatha. I forget what her actual
Harkness
hero.
Harkness. Yeah,
and Monica Rambeau, I believe, is a character with Photon. But I don't think they actually called her that.
She's the original Miss Marvel.
Okay.
She's the original Miss Marvel. Even though Carol Danvers was Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers' actual original character was Carol Danvers' original Miss Marvel. Monica Rambeau is the original Captain Marvel.
Okay,
gotcha. Yeah,
because in the original comic books, Carol Danvers is Miss Marvel, and then right after that, Monica Rambeau becomes Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Because of Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, and all and they haven't really. They've thrown some stuff in there, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Rodney. But I'm excited because that movie's coming out, and they're doing that show. They're doing a Disney Plus show called for the current Miss Marvel, which is
Kamala Khan.
What's her name? Kamala Khan.
Yeah.
And then they're doing the Marvels, which is going to be with Carol Danvers, Monica Rambeau, Kamala Khan.
Yeah.
So they're like I said, they're doing so much in springboarding, and we haven't even got to the X-Men yet. We have. What happens at the end of Morbius? You see Spider-Man, but then at the end of Morbius, you see a motorcycle there, and it pans out, and it's Mahershala Ali as Blade, which was in the 90s Spider-Man. Or what happens, you watch the Spider-Man movie, at the end of Spider-Man, you see Tom Hardy sitting there as Venom, or you see
anything can happen.
Like there's so much, anything can happen. So I get excited. I love this stuff because
anything can happen, and anything can happen. And the way they build up to it, it's surprise. You'd be surprised when you see them, but like it will fit. It's not gonna be one of those like, where did he come from? Because again, I don't want to turn this into crapping on DC, but like, like the Snyder cut, he just decided I'm gonna add some more people, and it's just like Martian Manhunter, like where do you fit in all this? Like you're just here, you go back to Batman vs Superman. It's like, oh, you're repurposing Zod to turn him into Doomsday. Okay, like why do I care? Like you spent no time building up to Doomsday. Like you threw away these characters that can make the stories really interesting, and you threw them in there and got rid of them, and it was meaningless. Marvel takes their time introducing everybody,
and Marvel's hasn't done a perfect job. They had those Netflix shows, and they took them away. They had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in this episode that was a big thing. They reference Coulson, and then they say he died. And that completely negated Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And going back to episode 1, when Loki goes in front of the judge, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you get the Avengers? They've been time hopping. What She goes, "Oh no, they were supposed to do that." You know what that fixes? That fixes all the talk about, well, what happened if Steve? Well, did it create this branch? Nope.
Right.
Yeah.
They cut it. They shut that down real quick. I said it's kind of lazy writing, kind of,
Yeah.
but it fixes the problem of fans saying, well, what happened when Steve went back? Why didn't this happen? Why did this happen? They were supposed to do that.
I don't look at it as lazy writing. What I look at as lazy writing is what happened in the final couple seasons of Game of Thrones, where you have all of these branches, and you're just like, no, we're just not doing that now. Forget it. We're not. Forget that happened.
Yeah, I'm not saying like it's bad writing or lazy writing. It was a simple comment that fixed all of that. It was a simple line that fixed it. Yeah. And now you as a fan just go, okay, that makes sense. Cool.
That's the
now we can move on.
Detail. It's attention to detail that they have that is missing a lot of times in movies. Because like one thing that I always like about the MCU is that they refer to what happened in Infinity War as the blip, right? Because all of us watching it, it's the snap. But nobody in the actual universe was there to see that happen, so they don't know it was he snapped his finger, so it's the blip. And that's just, it's little things like that I kind of appreciate, and that's why you have that line where they're able to kind of shut down that talk. Whereas in other movies, other shows, they would kind of overlook something like that and have people on message boards talking about plot holes.
Yeah,
exactly, and that fixes that plot hole because and there's an Easter egg where you possibly see Peggy Carter as a variant getting dragged into the TVA, and so people are like, "Whoa, is that the reason? Maybe they took her because of this and that." I think that's maybe a throwaway shot just to mess with your head. Because what I love about Marvel is the redirect. They're saying, look at there's the like I said in the church part where the little girl points at the devil. I think that's the main bad guy. I don't think it's who we find out is on the end of episode 2. I think that's the actual bad guy, whether it be Mephisto, whether it be a different version of Loki. That's the bad guy. The person we see in the end of 2, which kind of sucks because when you're trying to watch a show and you break it down, and you start seeing things, you get a little bit spoiled. At the end of episode 2, they show a credit and the credits and in the credits, they name that character.
Yeah, I actually read about that before we came on.
That, but let's get into it.
Sylvie.
Sylvie. Okay.
So in the comic book, Sylvie, which is my theory about this. I'll give you a little. But Sylvie is a character who, when Loki dies in Ragnarok, his soul is transferred to her. There's a lady Loki, which is when Ragnarok happens, that Loki's transferred into a body that was supposed to be for Lady Sif. In another issue, Loki dies and he transferred his soul into a body of a person. This person is Sylvie. Sylvie then joins the Young Avengers, but then finds out that Loki created her and all her memories are fake. That's not what happened. She was just created by Loki to house her soul, the soul, which is why in episode 1, when he goes to that machine and they say, "Oh, they're talking about souls." This is why it ties into episode 2 and that character because that character pops up, Sylvie, and which a lot of us thought it was Lady Loki. We were like, okay, it's Lady Loki, and even when she takes the thing off, you're like, oh, it's Lady Loki, and now when you read the credits, you're like, oh, okay, it's Sylvie, which now makes me think that she's actually what she's trying to do is she's not the big bad. She's either trying to stop the big bad, or she works with the big bad, or she's on a different mission. It's one of those 3 things. Because even there's a reference when they're talking, Loki and her, and she's in the other body, and they're talking, and he goes, "Oh, you're Loki. You're the version of me, Loki." And she goes, "Don't call me.
Don't call me." Yeah,
because she's not Loki. She's Sylvie. So now we got to now what ties into my theory is at the end of it, when in Infinity War, when Thanos kills Loki, he transferred his soul into this or created this person, Sylvie, and she woke up because a lot of people are even saying they have the same aura in the show at TVA. They're like, oh, they have the same aura, so it's the same soul. Or it's the same, it's the same soul. So what other soul would there be? It would be the Loki that died at Infinity War. That's why they have the same aura and they have the same soul.
So she would be the new like Loki going forward in the MCU.
Well, she would be Sylvie, but she's
yeah.
How can I say it? She's Loki, but her mind is not Loki.
Right.
The powers and everything is Loki. The soul is Loki. The mind is
her. Yeah.
Her own.
So
it's her own.
Now in episode 2, I mean, I guess we haven't actually talked about what happened in episode 2.
Yeah, we can get
so
to
that. they go to Loki figures out that the variant that they're hunting is hiding in apocalypses. Because when there's an apocalypse happening, there's no it doesn't set off any alarms. Basically, like there's no trail. Like you can't tell that somebody's there messing with the timeline because everybody's about to die anyway. So they kind of pin it down to which apocalypse they think this variant is hiding in. It's in Alabama in 2050 or 2051 in a department store. Mm-hmm. And so they, Mobius, Loki, and some other hunters, the Minutemen, they go to track down this variant, and they find somebody in the store, and it's kind of obviously the variant, and they're transferring kind of their soul into, maybe not their soul, but they're taking control of people's bodies through touch. One of the hunters goes up to him, played by Wunmi Masaku. She goes to kind of arrest this person who claims that they're shopping for plants in the middle of a hurricane. So that person grabs Wunmi's arm, takes control of her body. Loki doesn't really see this. And so now she turns around and kind of admits that she's the variant, right? And so she's kind of transferring into different people, just talking with Loki. And so I'm thinking that, they have their fight scene and all this stuff. And the character that Suge's been talking about, Sylvie, kind of reveals herself, takes off her hood and is speaking with Loki. And so what I'm thinking maybe is, if this is a person who Loki created, to house his soul. They had said that she was going around and collecting those reset charges that they use to delete branches. Yeah. And so is she trying to not necessarily blow up the sacred timeline, but maybe she's trying to figure out a way to go back and sort of erase what Loki did in terms of just housing his soul in her so she can be her own person? Like, is that... Like I'm not sure how it plays out in the comics, but to me it feels like she would be on a mission for herself. Is the way I kind of look at that.
Well, I did a little bit of cheating. So if you watch the trailer, there's a scene where you see the variant, but the hood is covered, fighting, and if you look at it, it's in the TVA. So now, what has happened every time a spike or a branch happens? What does the TVA do?
Like they go and investigate it. Yeah.
They go to rescue, right? So what happens when a bunch of branches take off? They're going to go to try to stop it, right?
That's what they did in the show. Yeah.
What are they leaving behind? They're leaving the TVA unguarded.
Right.
Yes.
So my assumption is she's doing this to get to the TVA because there's a point where Loki's talking to her and he tells her, "I want to take over the Timekeepers."
Yeah.
And she's in the body of Randy. She stops and thinks about it, and it says, "No, I don't want that."
Yeah, she said she didn't care about that. Yeah,
she didn't care about that. My thought is she's trying to destroy the TVA.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to destroy them, so she sets off these bombs. So they go take off to go try to stop all these branches from breaking off, and then she goes to the TVA. Now, if you bring the picture up that I sent you, there's some cool stuff in this picture.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, so if you let's look at the locations and the dates. So if you look at the top one, it says Portugal. What does the second one say? It says Volmir. Volmir. Okay, but look at the date, 2301. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thornton, USA, 1551. That's kind of throwaway. Cookville looks interesting because that's 1999. Then look at the next one, 2004. What does that say? Asgard. So that is okay. So to me, the big ones is Volmir, Asgard, Cookville. Those are very interesting dates and Pacific and certain times and everything like that to be shown on the screen. So that's interesting. And to me, that means something. I know sometimes it may just be aesthetic, but that could be meant for something. Because it's like, why would you bring up Volmir and Asgard, two really big crucial points in the Marvel universe. And there, even in the trailer, there's a point where a lot of people think that Loki's sitting with Black Widow at one point. There's a scene where you think that she's sitting. So Volmir, where's Black Widow at? She was in Volmir.
Yeah.
So and in Asgard, obviously that's where Loki's from. So it's very interesting, and this is what I love about Marvel, because they're hiding stuff, because you just don't know now. Now, I mean, we know who maybe, and you know what? It could be they're saying, oh, she's Sylvie, but she ends up not being Sylvie. She might be Lady Loki. She might be somebody else. And
or it could be Sylvie, and it's just not the story from the comics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's fun.
Yeah, in that picture, the thing that kind of stood out to me, and again, like you said, it could be just throwaway, just there, just because. But Thornton, USA in 1551, there is no USA in 1551 or 1555 or whatever the date was there. So that kind of sticks out to me as, maybe this is another, this is a branch where things went completely off the rails, and and it's completely different. And that could be just a thing where, maybe they just kind of stop there and are just showing all of these different realities that have sprung up because of what's happening with Loki, and it's not anything really to do with the story long term. But that's just something that sticks out to me, because Thornton, USA is not a thing that would exist at that point,
Right. Yeah.
Right. There was a bunch of Indians Native Americans running around on that at that time.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even notice that, Brodny, until you brought that up. I didn't even think about that.
And what was the year for Asgard? What year was that?
2004.
2004. And then I had asked on another show. I was like, well, when did Thor come out? And Thor came out in 2011, which is a trip now, because I thought it was way later. It was 2011. So that date is 4 years, or 7 years before Thor came out.
Yeah.
So I don't know what age Loki and Thor was at the time, but that could be very interesting. He could have made a body then. He could have done something.
And that was before he found out that he was
a Jotunheim.
Yeah,
that he was a frost giant.
Yeah.
And so I love this attention to detail, even if it's throwaway, even if it's just throwaway. The fact that we're talking about it makes it fun. And we forgot to mention the video in the first episode where they talk about that it was Secret Wars. Another theory that I had heard, or I thought of too, but
they said another sequel. She said another.
There was a war.
Yeah.
But what if the war has already is because remember the timekeepers are from the beginning of time to the end, so they saw it. What if the Secret War hasn't happened yet, but they know it's in the future, and so they're trying to prevent it by trying to keep the sacred timeline? And they're lying, and they're saying there's no other timelines, but there actually is.
Yeah, well, in the video, she says like there's a bunch of different timelines. They're trying to keep them in order to prevent another war. Meaning, we've had this incident before. We cleaned it up, and we're trying to keep it from happening again.
I think they say that they got rid of I think they said they got rid of those timelines and they put it all in one.
Okay, yeah.
They pruned everything else and put it into one sacred timeline, and that's the thing. But it could be another, as in this is happening somewhere on the timeline. I should say it could be in the future, way in the future, and they haven't dealt with it yet. And she's like, well, we don't want to have to deal with another one of those or something like that. But what if
they're lying?
Yeah,
what if they're lying? And there's a bunch of timelines, and they just don't want nobody to know, because even if you in the second episode when the judge is talking to Mobius, she tells him the timekeepers are keeping an eye on this situation very carefully. Yeah. So why would they keeping the eye on this very carefully? So there's a reason why they're concerned about this situation.
Yeah.
So
and I think it's clear that things are gonna go off the rails. So one of those branches is gonna cross the red line. I mean, we all already know that Doctor Strange is coming out with the multiverse of madness, right? So where you you're going to other realms, other universes, right? So we already know that, or we have a good idea that however this series ends in a few weeks, it's not going to be the way the TVA wants.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so I mean, look, that's the first 2 episodes, and Suge, we're gonna be back here next week for episode 3. The plan is to break down every single episode. So every week we'll break down the episode and give you our thoughts. But leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think, and we'll keep the conversation going from there. Suge, man, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Gives me the opportunity to geek out because I love it. A lot of people don't know this, but I'm a huge nerd when it comes to comic books. I love it. I love talking about it. I throw theories around like it's Ben Roethlisberger's interception. So I love talking about it. But
this is the channel appreciate
for it, man. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, big fan of your guys's. And you guys do a great job, and I love hanging out and just talking with you guys about anything sports, comic books, games. It's just awesome hanging out with you guys. So thank you for having me. I appreciate both of you.
And let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at SugeKnight323. You can find me on TikTok at SugeKnight323. Mostly dropping Schmodown Magic content and some of my bad sports takes. And then I do Twitch on SugeKnight1323. Somebody took my name, bastards. So you can find me on there playing Magic or Apex or whatever I feel like being bad at. But yeah, you can find me on those platforms. And thank you for all the support that everyone shows. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. So next week we'll be right here breaking down some more Loki.